Go to LinkedIn, look up the top tech companies to work for, do research on the companies, give yourself a set list of maybe the top 10 of companies that you want to work for, research them, look at their earnings reports, SDR your way into tech essentially. And then from there, I'd also reach out to people at those companies.
Hey, Victoria, Happy New Year. It's so good to see you.
Happy New Year, guys. Really excited to be joining.
Awesome. Victoria, tell us a little bit about your background, your career journey. How did you get into tech? What are you doing now? All that sort of good stuff.
Do you guys want the long story or the short story?
Go for long story, remember.
Always the long one.
Beautiful. I always preface that because it's a long story. So just some background. I was doing sales when I was like 15 years old. So that was like 12 years ago. You guys can do the math without me telling you my age. I was working for my dad. He had a call center at the time, and like sales has just been in my blood. Like my dad's a shark, my sister's a shark. Like it's just in our DNA. And I honestly went to college though for psychology and sociology. And I was like, I want to be a children's psychologist. I was like, I want to do that. I want to be, yep, Ricky. You're like, huh? What are you saying? I thought you were going to tell me you're getting into sales. But I loved working with children. I loved working with people, and I loved studying psychology and sociology. And then I realized after I graduated college, I'm like, I don't want to go through another. So I was talking to my sister. She owns her own staffing firm for like tech companies and like places, SDRs, AEs, marketers, like what have you, all across. And she's like, Victoria, you got to get out of here. You got to get out into New York. You got to be in the tech scene. You got to be an SDR. I'm like, what the fuck is an SDR? What is that? What do you mean I need to be an SDR? And she's like, just look it up. I think you'd be really good at it. Whatever. I go to New York. I interview for some companies. I ended up getting a job offer. And you're just graduating college. You're so excited to be able to have that offer like at your graduation. I was going to work as an SDR at a tech startup. I didn't really understand the product that well. It was like a research product, but I was just like really excited to be like in the tech scene. And like 4.5 years ago, like being in office was a cool thing. So they brought me to the office. I saw the vibe. Like everyone looked so cool, and there were plants and it was very vibey and whatever. And so I graduate 3 months before I start. So I moved to New York from Florida. 3 months before my start date, they're like, we're pushing your start date back 3 months. I'm like, what do you mean? I just graduated. I'm on my own. I just moved from Florida to New York. What do you mean you're pushing my start date back? They're like, unfortunately, we just don't have the right funding, yada, yada, whatever. They're like, but here's like an $1,000 stipend. I'm like, dude, that's going to cover like 2 weeks worth of groceries. Thank you so much, but no thank you. So my sister reached out to her network. This guy, Sean Harvey, shout out to him, posted on LinkedIn and shared my story and was like, by the way, Sean's a recruiter, just FYI. He's one of my sister's friends. He ended up being a recruiter for a live person, actually. Made a post on LinkedIn, got like 1,000 comments, like 1,000 likes. Like I was in nonstop interviews from Monday to Friday, like back to back. And at the end of it, I ended up getting 2 job offers, and I ended up sticking with LivePerson. I've been here ever since. So it's a very long story, but I like to share it because it was a scary feeling, right? Graduating college, cut off, right? Not in a bad way. I mean, thank God my parents like blessed that they put me through college and everything like that. But my dad's the type who's you earn your keep. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's fucking do it. After that, I was like, I'm not going to let that ruin it. Like I have bills to pay now. And that's my story. And now I'm here. I've been at LivePerson ever since. Freaking love it. Have nothing but great things to say about my journey and why I'm in tech sales, and why I think it's so important to start as an SDR. And like I think no matter what industry or job that you want to fulfill, like within tech specifically, like I think starting out as an SDR is like the best that you can. That's my long story.
That helps. 27 years ago, I was probably getting my first sales job too. But yeah, it's amazing to think you're the best kind of salesperson. You're trained to read people and mess with their heads and sell. I guess the best compliment.
Oh yeah.
She's the baby shark of the family too. Right?
Yeah, that's what she's been selling her whole life, right? So you think about someone coming out of school or stepping into this world for the first time. I agree with you. I think SDR is an awesome, or support SDRs. And getting into these early stages are amazing ways to get into the tech industry and really learn a huge amount. You're going to learn more than starting in some other areas. What tips do you have for someone who's just coming out cold, going straight into an SDR with no prior sales skills, which I think is perfect for that role? What couple of tips would you have for someone who's looking to go on that same journey? Because, you were internet famous, but most people are just going to apply and
Yeah, it's so funny you asked that because I talk about this a lot, like with my other leaders within the space. Like my best friend, she's a leader within the space too. And we talk about it because there's so many things that we wish we had known when we were trying to break into tech. I would say the main tips are like, number one, do your research. Figure out what companies you want to work for. I think if you're in college and there are career fairs, go to those career fairs, right? You never know what connections you're going to make. You never know what companies are going to be there. I think that's number one most important. I think most colleges should be doing that right now, is like having those career fairs. But if you don't have that, go to LinkedIn, look up type in top tech companies to work for. Do research on the companies. Give yourself a set list of maybe the top 10 of companies that you want to work for. Research them, look at their earnings reports, SDR your way into tech essentially. And then from there, I'd also reach out to people at those companies. I would reach out maybe to current SDRs that are working there or current AEs or the sellers that are there and be like, hey, really trying to break into this company. Would love to learn a little bit more about the culture, like how would I be a good fit, yada, yada, whatever. I would see also on LinkedIn what connections you have that are working at the tech companies that you want to work at and reach out to your connections. For example, if I'm ever looking at a company, you can see, okay, 19 other people from University of Central Florida work at this company. Add those people on LinkedIn. Hey, I went to UCF. Not saying everyone at LivePerson, I'm not trying to leave, love you guys. But I'm saying if you go there and you're reaching out to someone and you're like, hey, I just graduated from UCF, saw that you work at this company. I'm really trying to break in. Mind if we set up 15 minutes to chat?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would say, do not just blindly apply to these companies. Don't think, oh, they'll see my application. They won't. Like you got to be able to SDR yourself into a company that you want to work for. And if you want to break into tech, you really got to break into it and make those connections because no one's going to be reaching out to you unless you're putting yourself out there first. So
I really love that advice of going to SDRs at work at a company. If there's something that every company does, it is ask their employees if they know somebody for open positions, right? Internal employee referral programs are in every single tech company on the planet. And people like getting a bonus if they can get it from something. So making connections to SDRs in a company, I never would have thought of that. I think it's great advice.
Yeah, totally. I've had SDRs do that to my SDRs on the team right now. And some of them will message me and be like, Victoria, this candidate just reached out to me. They want to set up some time. And I'm like, damn, all right, let's talk. We have an open rec right now and we have 1,200 applicants. But so like my recruiter's not going to sift through all of those, but the ones that we're sending over are the ones who have done their research and have reached out to me, reached out to people on my team. That's what's going to get you in front of the hiring manager's eyes.
So we're just getting more into the scene of SDR and AEs. A lot has changed in the last 12 to 18 months, right? Obviously, AI is playing a bigger part in the land of SDRs. What shifts are you seeing? If I'm a founder, I'm coming from a founder sales-led type of an environment, and I'm just about to stand up my first team. What advice would you give to me in 2024? Where should I begin? What should the first team look like? How many SDRs or AEs should I have on the team? How do you view it?
Yeah. First things first, if I'm a founder, I'm getting my hands dirty with the team. I'm going to see like how we can sell this product. Like I'm going to figure out the ICP and I'm going to hire the right people to do the right things. So if I'm going to hire a VP of sales, like I'm going to trust that he's going to be able to build out. I would say though that like I would start with maybe one or two sellers first before even hiring any SDR, because obviously you want to generate revenue. And I would want those sellers to be part of like building out maybe a sales org or something like that and give them that career path. And then once we have revenue coming through and sellers don't have the bandwidth anymore to reach out or prospect, then I'd hire SDRs. Like, I don't think you start from SDRs. I think you start from like the sellers and like maybe the founders are selling too. Like I've had conversations with other CEOs and founders who, are getting their hands dirty too and closing deals. So that's what I would do personally. I think that having SDRs is a privilege. It's not it's a necessity, but it's also a privilege, right? So I'm just going to leave it at that because I think that's really simple to say. I think
Yeah.
SDRs are a
Yeah.
privilege. Yeah.
And then if I take that a little bit further, then, so I agree with you. I think Ricky and I both see founder-led sales continually, early stage startups, founder-led sales is prevalent. They need to do it generally because they're the person who understands why they built it, what they did. They're the one with
Right.
the passion to go sell it. They bring in a couple of sales. When do you think the right trigger point, like what should they be looking for to be like, hey, I'm no longer maximizing the valuable sales time of me and my one or two salespeople I've got on board. When do you think the shift comes in where they should be looking at, hey, okay, don't add 5 more salespeople. I should be adding someone who can free their time up. Is there a time point that you look at? Is there a trigger point that you see that occurs where instead of just adding overhead bodies to continue to sell, you free up existing people's resources by bringing SDRs in? Is there any trigger points that you see?
I probably would look at ratios, to be honest, and I would back into the numbers too. Like, what are our revenue goals? Like, how many meetings do we need to set in order to achieve those goals? And then I would look at how many sellers we have, the type of accounts that we're reaching out to. Is this more of a transactional sale? Is this more of a strategic sale where an SDR is going to have to do like heavy research? Or is this going to be something where it's a lot smaller? That's personally how I would do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if it was like an enterprise driven sales motion, you'd lean towards maybe more salespeople, AE driven salespeople.
Right.
And it was more a production queue of meetings needed, demos to do, maybe an SDR and keep your well trained guys just doing demos rather than making phone calls to prospect. I think that's a good
Right.
segment.
And then I also wouldn't want to hire too many SDRs at once or sellers at once, because ultimately, like, I would want these SDRs to be able to grow into sellers at the company. So
Yeah.
if I were to I think, again, it depends on ratios and like how we're growing in revenue and like the headcount and budget for it. But I would make sure that it's an even ratio so that SDRs can grow into that path of becoming a seller at the company.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I've never found an exclusive definition of SDR. Some people call SDR for inbound, some use them for outbound, and there's BDR and stuff. So, how do you view the role of a SDR in a typical SaaS? Are they really there to create demand, as far as you're concerned, or they're also there to touch the inbound leads and speed to lead and all that sort of stuff? What's your or how do you tackle that with your team?
Yeah, I think SDRs, to your point, people call them everything. They're like ADR, BDR, SDR. It's all the same shit at the end of the day. The point of an SDR is to generate that interest, book a meeting, qualify that meeting. That's how I see it. I also think right now we work on massive accounts. Our focus is enterprise and strategic. When SDRs are breaking into these large accounts, I think it's also important for them to bring in multiple business units. I don't think that an SDR should just, especially from an enterprise and strategic level, just focus on one person at one account. Like, you need to be touching all separate departments and bringing in as many decision makers as possible into a meeting. And I think that's a really important step of the SDRs to really generate that interest and qualify those leads. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, just want to pick your brain on onboarding. So we touched on the fact that SDRs are your junior people that are really they're set up for future success, right? So they should be going into every other part of the business. However, I've heard so many horror stories where the onboarding is literally like a week, and that's where you get this whole dump and run and all that sort of stuff coming from. So, what's your view on onboarding? What does a good successful onboarding process for SDR teams look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water.
I thought you were going to come back with this giant book or something. I was going to be like, holy crap, I forgot.
Okay, so what's my take on onboarding? I think enablement is the most important thing ever for SDRs, for AEs, the way you train someone, the way you onboard, the experience of onboarding, making sure that you're making this new hire SDR feel comfortable, excited about the company, about the culture, about the product, what you're doing. I think for us, it takes 3 months for an SDR to ramp. I say by the end of 3 weeks, you could be comfortable getting on the phones. But for those first like few weeks, you're Our onboarding right now is really just like me and my manager, and it's like one-to-one time with the SDR, and we're putting them through like rigorous boot camp and making sure they have structure and like just doing a lot of practice and role plays. So I think that it's really important that you're training someone from the start on, yes, I think the product is really important. Don't get me wrong. I think it's really important for an SDR to know product. But I also think it's more important for them to just understand the ICP, like how you're talking to prospects. What are certain tactics? Like, how are you getting creative, right? Let's do some role plays on phone conversations and objection handling and all of that and the fundamentals of actually being an SDR, and then learn the product a bit, right? You don't need to know every single technical thing as an SDR, but as long as you have an understanding of what pain we solve for and how you can speak to that and what the solutions are, then you're in good shape. That's just how I see it.
No, I totally agree. I think we both agree product is important, but what is more important is the knowledge for the industry and ICP to your personas that are involved. Going back even a step further, Victoria, how do you hire for these people?
It's a
Again,
great
you know,
question.
you mentioned you got like 100 applicants. Yes, someone might have gone to the same university as you. That's cool, but we'll be honest here. We know what happens at university. It's not necessarily a great indicator of how they're going to be at workplace. What does your hiring process look like? Do you have your go-to questions? Give us a peek into that.
He wants your secret tips so that when he next hires SDRs, he gets some really good.
By the way, just an FYI, on the university piece, I only mean that just because if you're coming out of college and
Yeah.
those are your only types of connections, or maybe if you were part of a community service group or sorority or something like, do you guys have sororities, by the way, in New Zealand? No. Or fine, maybe like a tennis club. I don't know. Something that you can just connect with on LinkedIn that like you resonate with.
All we do is drink. We just drink
Yeah.
for 4
We're,
years. and
we're,
we just-
we're drinking clubs. We're fine. We got
All right,
heaps of
so there
connections.
you go. Whatever gets you in, whatever gets you by.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, so the types of candidates, so we have a process and assessment. So first thing we'll do is I'll look at someone's background. Right now, I will be transparent. Like we are hiring people we've fluctuated in the past, but we're really focused on strategic enterprise work right now. So I'm looking at someone who has at least a year of experience as an SDR or life experience or career experience. Like maybe you don't need to, like, I'm not looking for candidates right out of college right now, as ironic as that is. And the reason being is because like the type of sale that we're doing is like very methodical and you got to do a lot of heavy research. This isn't just like a transactional spray and pray
Yeah.
type prospecting. So I'll look at that. Our recruiter will ask some questions just to vet out some candidates, but we'll have an assessment where we want them to prospect us and email us, acting as if they were an SDR. We'll do a role play as well. But also, I think just like sometimes on interviews, you just have to also like vibe with the person, right? Like someone could be so good on paper, but if they can't even talk to a wall, it's like, how are you going to be an SDR? How are you
Yeah.
going to be in sales? Because at the end of the day, people buy from people, right? So if you're able to be like, you guys get what I mean. I think it's really just finding the right characteristics where you're personable, where you're a go-getter, you're ambitious, you're not afraid to take no for an answer. You have thick skin. You got to have really big, like thick
Yeah.
skin to be an SDR. It's like the hardest job ever. So I think those are really important pieces. But from like a data perspective, like I'm looking at like how you do on your assessment, how you're doing in your role play, like asking questions, how you're implementing feedback. Talk to me about your previous roles. Talk to me about your previous management. Has your leader in the past given you some feedback? Give me an example of a time that you took it and applied it? Because I look for people who are really coachable and who take feedback and apply it, because I think that's also really important, especially in the SDR realm. So those are just some of the key topics that I'll cover.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm a SDR on your team, Victoria. I've done all the right things. I've gone through the onboarding process. I'm smashing the numbers. I'm yet to meet a SDR who wants to be an SDR for life. So I'm one of those. I've got itchy feet. So 6 months, 12 months into the role.
2
I've done
weeks.
everything you've asked me. 2 weeks. Right? No, come on. 6 months. 6 months. 6 months. I'm at a point where I'm like, Victoria, I want to do something big. So what is a career transition? How should I be having that conversation with my manager? Because I think that's where I've found that a lot of these individuals lack the skill set. So what's your advice there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I am a huge believer that you should always be your biggest advocate. I think you should always be internally networking. I think you don't wait until you're at that 6-month point. I think if you see a leader within the company, maybe on the sales side or an AE that you want to learn from, go out and learn from them. Put time on their calendar and let them know, hey, in a 6 months to a year from now, I really want to be XYZ. I really want to learn from you, yada, yada. In terms of coming to your manager, let it know straightforward right at the start. Hey, really excited to be here. Typically, I like to ask my SDRs, what are you motivated by? Where do you want to be down the line? I know you don't want to be here forever. Like, how it's my job to help you progress, whether it's at live person or outside of live person if we don't have the headcount, right? I think it's important that SDRs are always bringing that up on one-to-ones. I think that you're working with your manager to put a plan in place. If there's no plan in place at that company, at the end of the day, as a leader, you want what's best for your SDR. Whether they don't become an AE here, I would love to see them become an AE at another place or a manager at another place. And in my eyes, I see that still as a win. But to high level answer your question, Ricky, I think it's really important that you're touching on that on your one-to-ones, asking for feedback, putting plan into place, like starting to do your own discovery calls if you want to be an AE, starting to join later stage deal calls, learning from one of your AEs, putting time on maybe the VP's calendar or just, some senior folks at the company. I always encourage the SDRs to put time on like our VP of sales calendar or our VP of sales development or one of our top sellers. Or maybe you want to be in partnerships, go reach out to the partnership team. Maybe you want to be in marketing, go reach out to like some marketers over there. Like really try and do your research and make yourself known. Like I think again, like your internal brand is just as important as your external.
I mean, that's really good
Along those
advice
lines.
because if you got 30 SDRs, there's not necessarily going to be 30 other jobs that appear in 6 months' time for you to go. So doing all that work, I think is really good advice. But if I'm an SDR and I come in, I've talked to you, Victoria, I've said, hey, I want to be an AE. So that's my goal. I'm really excited to be here to learn as much as I can from you, but I want to be an AE. I do my onboarding. So 3 weeks, I get on the phone, I book time with your calendar, everyone else's calendar. I get to the 9-week mark. I sit down with you and go, cool, I've been here 9 weeks. I've done all the things you just asked me to do. I've made some phone calls. I've done some stuff. What's my time frame? How do you deal with those sort of discussions? Because people, I love the fact that people are their biggest advocate and they want to progress their career. But I also think there's a lot of powerful things you can learn being in support and or SDR in those areas where you really are the two toughest jobs in a tech company, right? One, you have to prospect, knock down, get no's, and the other, you have to get yelled at by customers who are already paying for something that they got sold to that are generally unhappy. They are difficult positions, but they will set you up for very long careers in tech. But I do see a lot of people who do it for a short period of time and they're like, cool, I'm ready to move. And I'm like, but you haven't learned some of the fundamental things that are going to make you a 20-year veteran in tech. How do you deal with that sort of discussion?
Listen, I'm very transparent from the start. Like I always say, listen, like it is my responsibility to help you progress and get you into the next role. But at the same time, you got to do your part too, right? Like I look to promote people who are all well-rounded SDRs. Like they're crushing their numbers, but then again, like they're also stepping up for the team. They're a team player. Like they are learning on their own and being self-sufficient too. Like taking on the extra steps to like, hey, just downloaded this course to learn more about becoming an AE. Or again, like I'm starting to lead my own discovery calls, or I'm taking on initiative to do like extra enablement like on the side. I also think like a time frame perspective too. Like I'm always upfront and I say to people who are in the interview process, like I don't look at them and say, yeah, crush your numbers and you'll be an AE in 6 months. No. Like you're in this seat for at least minimum 12 months. That's just how it is. Like and I think it's so important that like in the interview process, like hiring managers are upfront and transparent about that, because I'm sure SDRs are told, yeah, if you crush it, you'll become an AE in 8 months, and then you find them becoming disappointed. So like I always say, you're in the seat 12 months, which by the way, we do have a promotion path that like within the SDR realm, because obviously like you can't just sit in one place and be stagnant within the SDR role. So I also think that's really important. But to your point, like I always say too, if you hit that 12-month mark and like you're itching to get to the other side and we don't have that open head count, okay, let's see what we can do to like help keep you stimulated, help you keep like excitement. Yeah, I think of different things. Like I said, like running your discovery calls, maybe talking to VP of sales, meeting with the VP of sales bi-weekly, asking him, hey, what are some things that I can do right now to prove to you, like when you do have that opening down the line, we can just slip right in. Maybe you start, I've given SDRs in the past, like smaller deals to work just to get that practice as well.
Mm.
So doing things like that and getting creative with it. And then if it really gets to a point where, okay, this SDR has been here for 2.5 years, unfortunately, we don't have the budget. We don't have the head count. As a leader, I'm going to say, listen, by all means, I want to see you progress. Like at the end of the day, I in my past, I've tried to keep people, but then like when I was like earlier into leadership, I would definitely try and keep people. But then I think about, and I'm like, I'm doing a disservice to myself and I'm doing a disservice to them. And I would rather see them grow within their careers as opposed to like selfishly keep them.
Killing it. It's
Agreed.
the balance people don't talk about, right? As a leader, you want to grow these people. You want them to get better and go forward and conquer and do all those things. The flip to that is there is also a reason you hired them in the first place, which is to do a job. And yes, it's a difficult job, but you need them for a period of time to do that. And I think having that actual honest conversation is super important. Yes, we're going to help you progress. We're going to grow you. We're going to do all these things and that'll help you go faster. But I actually need you for at least this period of time because this is a super critical role. And I think people forget that sometimes. They think of SDRs or support as a stepping stone, but it's actually super critical position for the company you're working for them to be successful. For the people in front of you as an AE to be successful, they need you to be successful. For companies to hit their numbers, like it's not a bit role, right? It's not an internship, for example. It's a really critical role for an organization. Hey, I need you. I've spent time training you. I've got you to this point. I need you to knock this out for a period of time. But we can also do all these other things to help you be ready as soon as there's an opportunity for you to roll into.
Right.
I like your philosophy on that.
Yeah. And I always say too, listen, if you're doing what you got to do and you're putting your work in, I'll do my due diligence on the leadership level. I'll have those conversations internally and I'll pull in whoever I need to pull into to make sure that we get you to where you want to be. And I'm definitely very transparent on that because I just think that's so important. Like being an SDR leader, like you're part of their career, you're part of their trajectory. And I see it as a win, like when you, like, I think for any leader within any org to be able to promote and develop people. But I think SDR specifically, it's like a stigma. You want to get out of it. So I think it's just more important on that end. I will say though, I have SDRs who have been on the team for a while. And I think if you have the right comp plan, they're crushing their numbers. They got the freedom. Like I always say, like you hit your numbers, you're good. Go do what you got to do. If you're doing what you need to do and you're getting your job done, I'm not going to sit on your ass all day and be like, why aren't you hitting your numbers? Like, why aren't you dialing? I think SDRs also have the freedom if you're crushing it to do what you got to do during the day. So you'd be surprised. I think the old way of thinking is I want to get out of the seat as fast as possible. And the new way is if I have the right comp plan and I'm being paid correctly and I have the freedom to do what I want, like why leave?
I think that's a great point too.
You answered my follow-up question, which was, can we build a way where people can act, who are just really, there are some people I have met in my career who are just very good at doing it. They have the ability to make the calls, to do it. They understand the ICP super well. They're probably not real keen on hitting the road and knocking on doors and doing all that stuff and then doing face-to-face selling or driving that or going, but they love the bit they do. They love making that initial relationship connection with someone and having that little bit of a laugh and stuff and then handing it off to someone that's going to do the hard sell component, right? Can we build better comp plans that, and better titles? Because titles seem to matter a lot to a lot of people that allow those people to flourish and do this as their career and make really good money. Because from a business perspective, those people push a lot of meetings across and that's super valuable. But sounds like you've already done that.
Yeah. For example, and I won't say what it is, but we just adjusted our comp plan because like I said, we're moving more toward the bigger strategic enterprise level. Like at the end of the day, SDRs are motivated by two things. Three. They're motivated by hitting quota. Let's call it what it is. I think SDRs are really motivated by hitting quota. They're motivated by money. And then they're also motivated by career progression. But I think just after talking to so many SDRs and asking them what motivates you, most of them say, I just want to hit my numbers. So I think if you're putting in a plan in place to be able to make SDRs successful at hitting their numbers and also making good money while doing it, I think most of them, from what I've seen on my team and talking to other leaders within the space, it keeps people around longer, essentially. If you're making your team more successful. And I also think it really depends on the leadership you have. Like, I'm in the mindset of I work for my team. They don't work for me. So if I'm putting in tools and plans in place to make sure that they're successful, like they stick around. Like we've had SDRs who have left and come right back because they're so that's I don't know. Does that answer your question? I went on like a
Yeah.
tandem of that.
100%.
So
Because they
right.
stop and the
Right.
expectation shifts for them in their head. They're like, well, whole mindset changes. And then I think 6 months down the track, they regret the change or the move. And then the people they're reporting to, everything changes. So I
Right.
think to your point, maybe stay in the seat longer if it's the right fit for you. If things are working out, don't jump to the next thing.
And I think there's also different levels of SDRing. There's different ways to continue to stay motivated and stimulated. For instance, we now have SDRs on expansion. Okay, maybe the next career path can be like focusing on your current customer base and trying to expand and sell and reaching out to like different business units within your current customers. So I think there's like different ways to get creative and keep people excited and want to keep people within in the seat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like that because then they actually have to do some selling too, right? So if you're going to do expansion, then you've actually got to try to sell these. It's an easier sell. They're already a user, but you got to do that.
Yeah.
And and then you can step that next step half and that. I think that makes sense.
He
We haven't
says-
even asked any of the really hard questions yet. I'm looking forward to so when do you pay SDRs, right? Like, there's a nice question for you.
Slowly moving towards that, right?
We've done all the
So-
nice stuff where we're like, oh, look at all that happy family stuff. I'm like,
Just warming Victoria up, right? So now that you have cracked the
Listen.
can open,
There's
so
no
let's talk about
secret. All right, yes. So we recently changed our pay structure. It used to be 50-50. So it'd be on a sliding scale of 50K base to 60K base, 50K OTE to 60K OTE. So you can make up to 110 between 120. Now we've shifted to a 70-30 split. So 70%
Okay.
of your base. So for instance, let's say your OTE is like 110. Your base would be like 77. Your OTE would be 33. I mean, your commission would be 33.
Okay.
Does that
When
make
do I
sense?
get my commission?
Yeah, how do I get my commission? What am I getting paid out on? Is it pipeline revenue generation? What is it?
Great question. So we pay SDRs on stage 1 opportunities. What that means is they book a meeting with what?
Oh,
Sorry, what-
we used to call it SQO, so sales qualified.
Oh, we call it
stages.
SQLs,
Yeah.
sales qualified lead,
Yeah.
stage
Okay.
1 opportunity. It's
Yeah.
the same thing. So you pay an SDR on stage 1s, and then they get a small portion of closed 1 as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the meat of their commission comes from those stage 1 opportunities.
From the booking. Yeah.
But the reason you're paying them on the closed one, so that you see the journey for that
Yeah.
account all the way through.
Yeah, because we want them to book qualified meetings. Like at the end of the day, we can book so many meetings, but if we're not closing revenue, like what are these meetings for? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think having a small portion of that be tied to closed 1 opportunities, I
Yeah.
think it's really good. And also, like SDRs get so excited now when something closes because they're like, yes, I'm getting a paycheck for it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
part of this, and this was a huge deal, and
Yeah.
my name's on that too. So I think
Yeah.
it's like really motivating.
And then when you think
Uh,
about metrics that you look at for the SDR, you're paying them a good chunk of their comms based on them booking a meeting.
Right.
Do you track conversion of meetings into closed? What are the key things that you're tracking?
For me, I think the key things are like first thing, obviously your daily metrics matter too. What is your connection rate like? What is your response rate? What's your open rate? I think those things are really important too. But in terms of from like a meeting to stage 1 perspective, I look at that. I look at like how many meetings you had held and how many actually converted to pipeline. We also look at like how many early stage opportunities convert to late stage. So I think it like really all matters. At the end of the day, I think the main important thing for like SDRs to look at and be mindful of is like how many meetings they book to like how many actually qualified. Because you can book 100 meetings, but if you only qualify, if only 2 become qualified, like what the hell are you doing with your time? Like who are you calling at that point?
Yeah.
So like you can't just book a meeting just to book a meeting. Like it's got to be with like someone who's like someone we want to talk to. So I think that's probably one of the most important metrics that I look at.
Who determines it's qualified?
So we have a qualification criteria.
You got a criteria.
Yeah, because I think in every sales org, they probably have like battles between AEs and SDRs on what's qualified and what's not.
That's where I was going.
Yeah,
I wanted to hear the war
no.
stories.
Yeah. So I think having that criteria, it's okay. Sure, we can fight it all day long, but if we have a criteria set in place, there should be no argument. Look at the data. And I always tell my SDRs too, if you get every single piece of information on there, but an AE is still battling it, if it's qualified based on the criteria, then it's an opportunity. And same goes with an AE. If an AE is saying, hey, it's not qualified, and I look back at the notes and there's nothing filled out from there, AE, you're right. It's not qualified, right? I play devil's advocate. I think it's so important. Yes, you should bat for your team, but also you got to have a good relationship with the AE side too. I think having a criteria to make it black and white is very helpful. And who determines that? Sales leadership, marketing, your ICP. Are these people we want to go after? Are we having the right conversations? Are there the right volumes, the right metrics and put in place? Things like that.
I'm always curious, Victoria, what does the tech stack look like? Because SDR's role is difficult. There's a lot of different tools, processes. You talked about criteria, lead scoring, lead grading, all of that's going in somewhere. So what does that tech stack for your team look like?
We have pretty much like every tool needed for an SDR to be successful. We've got Lead IQ, we got Zoom Info, we got Reach Desk. Lavender is like a game changer, by the way. You guys are familiar with Lavender, right? Yeah, Lavender is awesome. I think it's like really cool how you can use data to actually send an email and not just go based off your gut. So Lavender, I think, is game changing. We use Outreach. We use Gong for recordings. I'm trying to think of what else. SalesNav, Salesforce. We really have the full tech stack. But I will say what's so important is doing enablement on the tech stack, because sometimes like all these tools can be so overwhelming and user adoption. Once you have those tools, just making sure that you have the right enablement in place and people are actually using them, because tools are like very fucking expensive.
Yes, they are. Every
You
week.
don't have to tell us. Why did you have to bring that up? You guys so excited. But
Every week I get that
agree.
email from Ricky. Hey, I'd like to buy this now. I'm like, holy crap, look how expensive it is. For one person to use it, probably.
It's so expensive.
Usage and enablement.
Yeah.
So what about this one, Victoria? Where do SDRs belong in an organization? I've seen them in the sales teams. I've seen them in marketing teams. I've seen them stand alone for a bit.
Just be fully out there and try something weird out. Do it.
Administration. Yeah.
You guys might not like my answer, but honestly, I think it really depends on the leader, to be honest. Whether they sit in marketing or sales, it doesn't matter. As long as you have the right leadership in place and you have the right alignment across sales and marketing, put us wherever. That's just how I see it. I've sat under sales and I've sat under marketing. We've gone back and forth multiple times. And at the end of the day, I think it really just depends on the leadership. And if you have leaders who can align on what our focus is, and at the end of the day, like we care about generating meetings and we care about generating pipeline, and whether that sits under sales or marketing, we all have one goal at the end of the day.
Interesting. I get that response quite a bit, right?
Oh, you guys have so many questions. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you've been through this, right? You've been at the same company. You've been under both sales and marketing. So you've experienced both. Was there any difference for you as a leader actually just running the SDRs? Did it make a major difference to you whether you're under sales or marketing?
Not really. Like you would think it would, but I think the main difference is marketing has like campaigns and we run these things, and like sales, I would say the biggest difference and like what I condemn about like our leadership right now is even though we sit under marketing, like they understand if we're still going to prospect as an SDR. Like we're not going to send like mass marketing emails and we're not going to send out like these long-winded emails. Like we're going to prospect like SDRs, if that makes sense. And I think some people have some teams probably have the stigma of, oh, if you sit under marketing, like you have to do it this way. Or if you sit under sales, like you have to do it this way. And no, like I think if you have the right SDR leaders in place to be like, hey, this is how we prospect, and like respectfully, like we can A/B test it, but if this is how it's working for us, we're not going to change that, essentially.
My view has always been that it really shouldn't matter, right? Because execs at the top are aligned. So whether you report into sales or marketing, it really should not matter. They should be saying the same things. It's the SDR leaders that are doing all the groundwork, the frontline managers. And if they are the same, what difference does it make? To Sean's funny point, it could even report into finance. It could report into operation. It could report anywhere. So when people say, depends on the right leader, and I'm like, right leader at the exec leadership level, there's no difference. CRO, CMO, they all should be the same. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I know it just comes up quite often.
I've decided new year, new me. I ran probably one of the tightest executive teams that existed on the face of this planet. And I will still say difficult times are always going to appear. And at some point in time, your sales org and your marketing org are going to have some sort of friction, even though I had two of the best people and they loved each other. And the discussion point on when something is or is not qualified is always going to be a potential friction point that can occur.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always interested about where SDRs are sitting, right? Marketing and or sales, because that friction point is actually generated from which side those people are sitting on.
Totally
If they're sitting
agree.
inside sales, that friction point disappears because it's really hard for an AE to, or my sales lead to be like, hey, this is shit. This isn't qualified. I'm like, you own the whole freaking pathway, mate. Like, how are you saying your AE, your SDR is giving you crap leads? You own that pathway. If marketing owns it, then my sales guy could be lead. I can be like, yeah, marketing, no matter how tight you are, like I said, around a really tight one. My reasoning for saying it should sit in sales is because when things are difficult, and it might not be difficult right now, and everything might be hunky-dory. And when everything's hunky-dory, everyone is best friends and everything is going in the right direction. In all companies, every executive is working together to get the right outcome. When things get difficult, every human being on the face of the earth goes into protection mode and goes, Jesus Christ, we're in trouble here. I'm in trouble. I'm getting attacked. What can I do? It is a normal, natural human response. No one means anything bad by it. And the reason I've always been an advocate, because I'm happy to not sit in the fucking middle like you, Ricky, and I pick a side. If they're inside sales, you remove that friction point. There you go. There's my soapbox for today.
Stop trying to put me on pip. That happened 18 months ago.
We never really got to that point, but it was a potential friction point, right? We had a really tight team. We never had arguments, but I've always looked at it from this point of view. If it was all inside the sales generated pipeline, it's really hard for sales to then argue that wasn't qualified or that team is doing a crap job giving me qualified leads. Well, you own that pathway. That's on you.
No, I totally see that point too. I really do. Again, I think it really depends on like the executive leadership that you have at the top. And if they're like, for instance, like I love how sometimes they're like, we don't care where the pipeline comes from as long as we're closing deals and we're generating pipeline. Like, who cares if this is inbound or outbound? Let's get our work done type thing mentality. So I also think like SDRs are just a separate entity. Like they're not marketing, they're not sales, like they're SDRs. It's sales development. It's different.
Do they belong in their own little world?
Yeah, like it's different, right? I think utilize your SDRs wisely. Like, what are your goals and where do you want to aim them? That's how I think of it.
Yeah. Bring the spotlight back to you, Victoria. Is it SDR managers? What does it take to be one? How do you become one? What skills are you sharpening up year on year, quarter on quarter?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say to become an SDR manager, obviously be an SDR first, right? You want to lead by example. You want to say that you did it, you nailed it, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. I would say there's little steps to it. I think my path was I became an SDR, I was a team lead, I was a manager, senior, director, but whatever. But I think if you become an SDR, okay, you know you want to be in leadership. How do I get to be a team lead? Ask your manager. What are the things that I need to do? Can I start running trainings? Can I start running we have weekly coaching sessions. Can I start running role plays? Can I be the next buddy for someone who comes on as a new hire? Then I think, okay, you have that open head count. You're moving into management now. I say, take some courses, join Pavilion, join like Rev Genius, network with other SDR leaders, learn from other SDR leaders within tech, reach out to other people. Everyone is so friendly on LinkedIn. Someone reached out to me to throw some time on the calendar. She's an SDR leader. She's like, hey, Victoria, I just want to pick your brain on some best practices. Can we find some time? Sure, let's chat. I would say that's number 2. Number 3, always get with the times. Always make sure you're educating yourself. SDR work changes so much. I learned so much from SDRs, but also like other SDR leaders because the game is always changing. The way I was an SDR is so different. And I think if you have the right leaders who are like really involved in coaching and are staying up with the times and aren't sitting in their old past ways and being like, when I was an SDR, this is what worked for me, because things are changing. Like when I was an SDR, I was spraying and praying, and here I am. Like I would hate if one of my SDRs did that right now. I think just making sure that you're always working on your professional development, but also personal. Make sure you have a routine. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, because if you can't be good for yourself, you're not going to be good for your team.
Yeah, great tips, right? Another one from me. I know you're big on mentorship. Can you look back at your career, 1 or 2 mentors that you've had and the lasting impression they've left on you? What are one or two tips that you could share with everyone?
Yeah, I would say for a few things though, I think like in in work, you have like your mentor, your sponsor, and like your champion essentially. Your mentor is like your mentor, your sponsor is like your boss, and then your champion. I think your sponsor and your reframe that, edit that out. You have your mentor and you have your sponsor. And your sponsor is your boss, but your mentor is more like your champion and someone like you can go to. It's funny, I've had so many different mentors like being here, but I would say one that stuck out to me, she's not here anymore, but she worked at Live Person. She was a VP here. She is awesome. She's a straight shooter. Like she is also like bubbly and nice, but also get your shit done. And I also think of, I don't know, I think I have many different mentors. I honestly can't sit here and say that I had one specific one. Like I've picked up like information from so many different people that like I use as one. And I would say, honestly, my CMO is like a fucking badass and she is like someone I want to be like. And I go to her for advice on things. And like, there are things that like, I like getting coaching on from her. But there are things that maybe I can't get from her that I can get from someone else. And I really make sure that I have a support system of mentors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this has become my favorite question of late. So I'll ask you the same. When you do decide to hang up your boots, which you may not even really, maybe cleats or boots, whichever works for you.
Probably
When you
boots.
decide
Like
to
I
hang up
was not
those
active.
boots,
Yeah, I
okay.
was not an
So
athlete.
when you do decide to hang up your boots, what do you want to be known for?
That's a great question. Wow. I want to ask that on interviews. I'm not going to lie. I
Go
want
for
to
it,
be
you
known
should.
for, and this is going to sound so cheesy and cliche and corny, but whatever. I want to be known for inspiring people. I feel like if you can just change one person's life, then you've done your job you've done your job. I think I'm not looking to inspire millions, but I also think that I just want to be known for inspiring people and like getting people to make changes in their life. And like, to be quite frank, like I went through a period where I was so unhappy and like I was just doing the same thing over and over again. And like I was just not happy at all. And like I've been in like those like dark places where you just feel like you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I've made it to the other side where I'm like feeling like stimulated again and like excited and motivated. And if I'm able to take what I've learned from that and help other people, whether it's like personally, professionally, what have you, like that's what I want to be known for, is like helping people like get better and inspiring, like whether it's in your career or your personal life.
Mic drop. Good
Mic
response.
drop.
Love it. Yeah.
One day we're going to ask that question and someone's going to be like, I want to be known as rich or something like that. Everyone's response has been amazing so far. It's been all these, really nice, great stuff. One day we're going to get one person who's just not going to be able to think it's fast on their feet, just be like, I don't know, rich, good at
I
my
wanna be
job,
known
something
for
like that.
Like the best
Yeah.
CEO in the world.
Yeah,
like, no.
something like that. Yeah. Like something like that.
With the most amazing CEO, most underrated CEO in the world.
Yeah. Something like, we've got to get one person who just does that. So far, they've all been like,
That
amazing.
just-
I don't think we'll release the episode.
I think
Yes,
that just
we
means
will.
you guys have been having like, yeah, you have to. You got to do that. That just means you guys are picking the right people to bring on this podcast.
Yeah,
Also
exactly.
true.
Exactly. Victoria, so we'll take you through a quick fire round. These are meant to be easy. The first thing that comes to your mind, just spit it out. Favorite sports team?
The Giants. By the way, I don't like sports, so I'm just putting it out there.
That's two.
It's important
Yeah.
that you didn't start with, I don't like sports. You just picked a team and you went for it. That's important.
You want to know why I said it? Because my dad's a huge Giants fan or a Knicks fan. He's both. I don't know. My parents are from New York, so whatever. Do what you will with that information.
What about favorite music genre? What do you listen to? What's on your playlist?
This is
I
the one
love
that matters the most to Ricky. So just throwing that in.
Yeah.
I love a good classic rock. Like right now, I have Stevie Nicks hanging up above my desk. I have a really cool painting that I'll take a picture and send to you guys after. And it's like Bob Dylan, David Bowie, Bruce Springsteen. Like it's cool artwork.
It's been a lot of rock this year, mate.
Is that your favorite? Classic rock?
I'm more heavy metal, but it's not hip hop, so I'm happy. Yeah.
What about favorite movie of all time?
Either Bridesmaids or White Chicks.
White Chicks. I like White Chicks. That's funny.
I just know every single line from both, and they're both such stupid movies, but they never get old. Like I could watch them over and over again.
The cheesy ones are the best.
Yeah.
What about favorite place to visit?
Favorite place to visit?
And you can't just say New York.
No, God, no. That would be so cliche. No. Montana and Wyoming, like out west. My favorite place to visit. I love being out west.
That's definitely the
We've not
first
had that
out west,
before.
folks. No,
Yeah,
that's the first one.
That's the first out west answer. What do people usually say?
Italy.
Europe,
There's been a lot of Italy. Yeah, a lot of Europe.
Yeah.
Mexico's been popular.
Costa Rica,
I'm
New
from
Zealand.
Florida, so all those places are the same to me. Like
Yeah.
Mexico.
I hear you.
Yeah.
That makes sense. This is the main one, and this is where we've been leading up to for the last hour or so, Victoria. If you were given a choice, which peanut butter are you going to go for? Crunchy on the left, smooth on the right. There can only
Smooth.
be one.
Smooth.
Oh,
You wanted
Just
me to say
rock it.
crunchy.
Smooth this shit.
we wanted you to say crunchy, 100%. It's,
No,
Alright.
who
you know,
eats
But
crunchy?
we're
gonna
gonna
have
edit it
peanut.
out because we can edit
Yeah.
it out because you
We'll-
said
we will
crunchy
edit
now,
it.
so we'll just
No
be like
stress.
that.
Yeah.
We'll just say
It'll be
crunchy.
editing to say crunchy. If you hadn't said crunchy, it would have just been my voice that would said crunchy.
Who eats crunchy peanut butter?
Who eats smooth
Everybody
peanut butter?
does.
Just have butter if
But
you
I
want smooth
think
peanut butter. It
because
makes no
Americans,
sense.
No. But
Yeah.
here's my question. Natural or preservative?
it's all like organic.
Oh,
it's just
yeah,
like,
no.
you know,
I know,
Yeah.
but the
I'll-
reason why I
I'll-
ask that is because the natural one, all the oils are at the top. It's like fucking disgusting. It's like all
Yes.
those oils
Yeah.
up there. I'll eat it. I have to because I'm not going to eat the preservative Skippy one. But at the same time, the
Those are the
oils are
best.
sitting up.
I
forgot you
want the
guys are-
one that, yeah, if there was a nuclear war, cockroaches and my peanut butter would survive, and I'd still be able to eat both, and I'd be happy. See?
That's fair.
Your organic one's
Yeah.
gone off, and you'd have to chuck it out. Now you're starving. I'm okay, and I'm still getting protein out of my little crunchy bit of peanut, so I'm good.
hilarious.
Oh my God, you're
Well,
so right. The little peanuts in the crunchy has more protein.
That's right. That's the other
Yeah.
one's processed down to nothing. It's just basically butter.
That's fair. That's
got
so
too much
fair.
oil stuff in it. Yeah.
That's so
Well,
fair.
Victoria, thank you once again for coming on our pod, sharing all your wisdom and sharing all the laughs. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. Had so much fun. It's great to be on.